resting up after a very hard weekend of DJing and making money and all of that good stuff, man. Just trying to make an honest day's living, you know what I'm saying? So I'd like to thank you guys and welcome you guys to the show. If you guys aren't familiar with the Soda You Dig show, this is a platform where we love to have open and candid conversations about a plethora of topics and sometimes just talking about things that come to mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually introduce you guys to the new show and the new segment. But the first thing I want to do is to make sure to let you guys know that we have a multitude of ways for you guys to be able to show us support. One of those ways is the PayPal button, which is right above my head. PayPal.me/DJJustJOK. If you ever want to show any monetary love to the show for us to continue to keep building it and to continue to keep growing, or if you guys want to show some long-term support, you could also hit the Patreon, which is patreon.com/DJJustJOK. You guys can also make sure and check out those links. I think we have t-shirt links. If nothing else, if you want to just check out a cool video that me and my brother Kurt Dog have out, look in the description box. Make sure you click that link. Make sure you give us a thumbs up on the video. A very easy, free form of being able to show support for the Soda You Dig is to hit this little icon that is shaped like this hand right here. Make sure you guys hit that thumbs up for your boy. That is a very free way to show support for the show. Maybe if you guys aren't financially able to be able to contribute, what you can do is share the show. When you share the show, if other people like what we do here, they might come in and they might continue to be a supporter. So if they do that, then you have actually contributed to the show also. So I want everybody to know that all of your contributions are big time appreciated. So what we're going to do is we're going to move into the introduction of the show. Then we're going to give shout outs to everybody, and then we're going to go ahead and actually start the show. So what are we doing here today and what is on the screen? Well, that little icon down there in the bottom right hand corner of your screen it says Splain That, SPLAINDAT, hashtag. So a person might wonder, well, what the hell does that even mean? What that means is Splain That in the almighty Urban Dictionary actually means explain the pre-discussed directions or conversations. So what that means is that whenever I have people on for Explain That, we're going to talk about a topic, we're going to have a great conversation, and that's what you guys are going to witness. So this is the new segment of the show. I hope you guys appreciate that we're continuing to try new stuff through, so thank you very much. Say they're taking advantage of those challenges, man. So when you guys get a chance, just make sure and show us. Let me see. You're welcome, man. Thank you very much. So shout out to my sister Chaz, man. I love you and thank you so much for what you do. Now, let's go ahead and move into the show. So for the people that like the timestamp it right about here. This is the show, the start of the show, and I'll cut out that first portion of the show so the people that watch it on the replay can just get right to the show. I want to welcome you guys to Explain That. And what this is about us having conversations with people whenever they want to come on and have topics about very specific things. And what we have on the show today is a topic about inner city teaching. This is going to be presented by my brother Matthew. Matthew, would you go ahead and like to introduce yourself, my friend?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm hearing feedback.
Okay.
Give me 1 second.
I got you, because I can hear you good. Just whenever you get ready, let me know.
Okay, I just had to exit the chat. I am a United States Army veteran. And somebody that got into teaching in Milwaukee for about 8 years. And I taught primarily in the inner city. Most of Milwaukee, to be honest with you, is the inner city.
Okay.
And I went through a process of learning about our modern education system, the union, the issues with the family. I had many of my students that were gunned down, that were incarcerated. Many of them failed. And I recognize now that the structure is set up not for success. It's set up to support the structure that is already in place. And it is not for the children that are in it. It is basically set up to support the unions that profit off of it, the politicians that get massive contributions from those unions, and we are failing an entire generation of youth. And this is a slow rolling genocide, as I always refer to it, and it pisses me off. And that's why I wanted to come on here and talk about it with Jay.
Absolutely, man, and I think that's dope. And the thing is this is the thing. People wonder why we primarily focus our efforts on the urban community, or otherwise known as the Black community. It's because of the fact that the honesty of it is no other community in the United States is having as much trouble, as much difficulty, complaining as much, or anything like that besides people that have my skin tone hue. So, with that being said, I think that we can appreciate when anybody from any walk of life or any religion, any background comes and tries to either offer advice, to offer anything that they can in order to try to improve the conditions that we have. Because I think in order for us to get to a point to where we can turn around and be proud about what we have, it's going to take help not only from us, starting with us, which is why, like I say, most of what I talk about primarily concerns the Black community, but we also need help from everyone. And I think that we need to be receptive to the idea of good information, truth, and logic, right?
Yes, absolutely, Jay. I wanna bring you back to that first day that I had in basic training. We were talking before the show, and one of the first lessons that I learned was from this big burly black drill sergeant that came into the room, and I'm sure that you guys have all seen Full Metal Jacket, where you are not white, you are not black, you are not Mexican, you are not Asian, you are all green. That is literally the speech that he gave us,
Mm-hmm.
and that was actually the values that were instilled in basic training to me, and everybody else in my class, at least. And I took those very seriously. If I had a black battle buddy, I cared more about what he could do to save my life and to
Yes.
save the lives around him. Um, then I cared about his skin color. Skin color was illegitimate. It didn't matter. And I took that into the workplace, that perspective. I still have it to this day. I think that skin color is a difference that is overblown. People focus on it way too much. And I'm not going to say that I don't recognize it. I do recognize it. Jay, I recognize you're a black man. I recognize that there are certain differences between us, but it's an it's an immutable difference. There's something that you can't change. You never chose to be born black. I never chose to be born white. Um, and we shouldn't judge each other based on that. We should judge each other based on our values, based on our logic, based on our principles, and based on our works.
Wait, wait,
And
wait. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
sorry.
Guys, if y'all agree with what Matt just said, hit the thumbs up for me. Invite some more people to the show. I absolutely love what he just said. Because too commonly, we ignore the human aspect about it. And I personally think, I actually had a conversation with Jay McLovin about this just a few days ago. My personal opinion, race is nothing more than a social construct and an idea that we have now taken and just absorbed it, and now it's just kind of like this thing to where we just can't get off of it, we can't get around it, we can't see past it. And to me, it's just nothing more than an idea. At the end of the day, we are all human. Can we agree to that?
Absolutely. That's absolutely what I believe. Your intrinsic value as a human being is no different from mine.
I love it. Love it. Let me give a shout out to Ted on Fire, who sent a donation through. Thank you very much. And that's pretty dope. So, like I said, whenever you guys get a chance, if you would, more than anything, hit that thumbs up. I want to make sure and share it with other people. That way they can know that we're live. This was, we didn't schedule this too early in advance. So, like I said, people are going to be able to see this as they come in. But again, let's go ahead and jump right into the meat of what you want to discuss, because you actually say that you teach in the inner cities. And I was kind of looking at some of the email that you sent me through, and I wanted you to kind of give kind of a synopsis about your teaching experience. What do you see in the schools?
Okay, I want to first start out with the military, and I'm going to be very, very quick with my experience in the military. I joined after 9/11 because I believe that the blessed life that I was able to live in this country before that horrible day um, made me responsible for the security of our nation. I have nieces, I have nephews, and I felt responsible for contributing to the national defense of the country. And so I joined February 28th was when I actually rose my hand and took my pledge. Um, I went through the medical process, went to basic training the next summer. And the way it was set up for me, I was going to college full term or full time. I was in ROTC,
Hmm.
and then I was also enlisted at the same time with a National Guard unit in Onalaska, Wisconsin. And I would go to classes full time, but then either be doing ROTC every weekend or the National Guard every weekend. And then the summers I spent going to training camps. I was a combat engineer, airborne, air assault, and I I was injured in the course of my duties, and had to, um, in my junior year, I had to drop out due to those injuries.
Hmm.
I was issued deployment orders. I went to um, a training session that was overseas, and I got injured. Um, and during that training, had to come back. I was dependent on painkillers because I tore out both MCLs of both of my knees during a training exercise, and permanently disabled. Came back to the United States, and I spent several months in traction, getting therapies for my knees.
Hmm.
And in that time, I actually started working for several disabled people, giving like personal healthcare home aid. And I realized I really had a talent for dealing with like autistic people, people that had Down syndrome, Parkinson's, um, and that's what led me to the Troops to Teachers program. Upon my graduation, I entered into the AmeriCorps program and started my first year of teaching at Vincent High School. How
Okay,
does that sound to you, Jay?
jump right into high school.
Yes, absolutely. That was my preference.
Hmm.
I wanted to go into high school. I have I went into the special education um, uh, department because that's where their most need was. Um, that's not where I stayed though. I didn't stay there. I only did 1 year of special ed with Vincent High School, and because I had a major falling out with my principal because of his policies. Um, and the policies of the district. I realized very quickly that as a unionized member, um, I was, as a first year teacher, being asked to pay dues to the union. And I quickly realized that that same union would never bother to defend me as a new teacher.
Hmm.
They always defended the teachers that were tenured, quote unquote, tenured, which means that you had more than 5 years teaching experience in the school. The union looks at number of years that you've taught over maybe the scores of the students that you teach.
Right.
And so they will always defend the teachers who have been there the longest over maybe the best teachers, of which I was one.
Yep. And I think when my mother was teaching, she referred to that as seniority. So,
Absolutely,
I
that's
heard that.
exactly. I mean, whether you want to call it seniority or tenureship, um, it doesn't matter. It's a system that is broken and does not serve our kids.
Hmm.
Um, and so from Vincent, I went to go and work in Sheboygan, several other schools, and then landed a spot in this school called Right Step. And Right Step was an amazing school, in my opinion. For the population of kids that I taught in the special education program, let me break that down. Maybe I should go into my first year of teaching at Vincent High School just to show um, how dysfunctional it was.
Okay.
My my first day of showing up at Vincent High School as a new teacher, we had no books, we only had desks, we had no lesson plan, and literally that day I was told, you're going to teach civics, you're going to teach biology, and you're going to teach economics.
Hmm.
Uh, to this class of special education students. And so I'm thinking, I'm walking into the room thinking, okay, these are all going to be, EBD, emotionally or behaviorally disturbed children. They're going to be CBD, cognitively, C, sorry, cognitively disabled children. They're going to be autistic. They're going to be Downs. None of the kids in those classrooms were actually legitimately special ed.
Hmm.
They were all kids that were disruptive and disruptive enough to have their parents place them into the special education program.
Right.
And these
I've
kids,
seen
they
that
didn't
happen
need
a
to be in
lot.
special ed.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot.
Well, that's all it is in the inner city. I mean, essentially, special education is a dumping ground for the children that kind of need the most attention in the
Yep.
classroom and are so disruptive that the regular education teachers don't want to deal with them anymore. And so, literally, very, very few resources are given to the special education platform or the special education teachers. Um, and the ironic thing is that those kids are they bring in the most money for the school. A regular kid, um, a regular education student will bring in about $10,000 per year for a school.
Okay.
A special education teacher will bring in, or a special education, sorry, not teacher,
Special
special
education
education
student.
student will bring in $14,000 plus, especially if they're disabled. They will bring in more than that. And look, I'm not saying anything about the legitimately disabled. Those people that do that, those people that work with Downs and autism, and all of those legitimate special education um, applications, those are saints. Those people that work with those kids, it is extremely hard to go in day after day and work with a kid that has absolutely no retention and think that you can teach them a subject like math, algebra, or whatever you want. It is extremely frustrating, and most of it revolves around physical habilitation.
Yes, absolutely.
Um,
I've seen a lot of that, and I got to tell you, there was a point in time where I even, we talked about my education background a little bit. One of the things that I kind of neglected to say anything about was the fact that I actually had some CNA training. So all I could say, shout out to the nurses, the CNAs, the RNs, the LPNs,
yeah,
all of them, because I'm gonna tell you something. That is not once I finally got to my clinicals, I said, oh shoot, I can't do this. It takes a
yeah.
very, very special person not only to do the job, do it well, to be able to actually have some type of compassion for those people. Also, it takes a very special person. So I 100% feel you on that.
My mom is now she's a teacher of nurses, and she works at a university close to where we live, and she teaches clinical and things like that. So I absolutely have 100% understanding of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back to my classroom, I walked in the first day. I had absolutely nothing. So the first day I stood in my class sizes, I had four of them. Um, and they were, I had about 45 kids in each class. A regular special education class is never supposed to exceed 19. 14 is typically the max it is supposed to be.
Okay.
So my classes were 45 kids. I had kids that were literally sitting on the ground. No books, again, for any of the subjects that I was supposed to teach, no resources in place. And I had to, over the coming weeks, beg, borrow, and steal. And so for my classes, I engaged them in a very long conversation about who I was and what my experiences were, and who they were and what their experiences were. And I can tell you, out of the children, and they were children, they were under the age of 18. I don't look at high schoolers as adults. They're not mentally there yet.
Mm-hmm.
They can think they are. They can think that they're smarter than everybody else. They are not mentally mature. They don't understand the consequences of their actions. And of the kids that I had in my class at Vincent, um, I can say about half had a family member that was gunned down within 5 years of
Wow.
them coming to my classroom.
Wow. Wow. Mm.
I mean, there was a guy who was a teacher's aide and very hooked in. He wasn't a licensed professional, but he was definitely very respected in the building. And he came to me and just walking down to lunch, he was pointing out all the people. This person just had her aunt was raped and killed on the street. That person, that child, again, I'm going to use the word child because I want to emphasize that child had his mother killed. Uh, that child had his brother killed. That one lost two daughters to HIV. That one His mom is a whore on the streets, and he's basically living in a garage somewhere. We don't know where. These were children.
Mm-hmm.
These were children. And this guy knew, he knew the stack. He knew their situation. And I'm not blaming him at all. I mean, I actually really appreciated him. He was a guiding influence there, because he put me on the platform to basically say, you know what, screw what the administration does. We need to do for these kids because their families are not doing for them. We are the last resort as the public schools.
Yes.
And that's not supposed to be the way that it is.
How many times
not...
have you watched the show and watched me talk about that home training, manners, education, speaking, writing, all of these basic essential skills should start at home. I don't believe that children learning, the basic skills of life should just be dumped on teachers. I've always felt like that was bullcrap.
Absolutely. That's not teachers are not made to be babysitters. And I know that Tommy always says that in the show. In fact, the first time that we talked, he said, let me guess, the first time you were placed, you were basically an overpaid babysitter.
And Carrie actually, and I didn't mean to cut you off, Carrie actually asked if you had a conversation with Tommy before because she thought she recognized your voice.
Yes, I have. I've had 3.
So, Carrie, are you still in the chat? So I wanted to make sure that you were able to hear that yes, he has called in the Tommy show before. So that's pretty cool that we kind of become familiar with people that that you hear on the phone. You know what I'm saying? So that's pretty cool.
Thank you. But I've been trying to get this message out there about the failure of these public schools, the dramatic failure. And now Milwaukee is the #1 worst performing public education system as of 2018.
Get the hell out of here. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not.
Because you want to know how funny that is? I'm originally from Oklahoma, and as of March, April of this year, Oklahoma was ranked the #2 worst. So we were right behind y'all. God dang it, man. That's sad.
I mean, it's like Detroit. It's like Chicago. It's urban decay and the collapse of the family. And that's what we're really seeing here.
Wow.
And what it's resulting in is escalating violence on the city streets. And there is a direct connection. But Jay, what you say about the family, that has to come first. The schools are a secondary, they're like a secondary infection of the disaster that what we're dealing with. It has to start with the family, and we have to get the message out there that fathers are absolutely necessary.
I need you to elaborate on that point, because that is what we do here. As you guys know, the So Do You Dig, we are advocates for children first. Can you please reiterate what you just said about how important fathers are? I love what you just said.
Okay, especially for young males. You need a father to be in their life, because if you don't have a father in their life, the streets will become their father. People will usurp that position, especially gangs. Gangs are predatory, and they will go after kids that are not being looked after. And Jay, I could go off in 18 different directions and give you 18 different examples of what I'm talking about. But when there is no father in a young man's life, he will seek to fill it with whatever he perceives to be the strongest influence in his orbit, in his life. And usually that becomes the thing that is celebrated by the neighborhood. What is celebrated in most Black communities, in most Black inner city communities, it is the gang life. It is the life of crime. Mm-hmm. It is exactly what your media, the rap culture, pushes. And these kids, the rapists are their idols. Why would they ever challenge anything that these people are saying? Why would they ever second guess it?
You actually bring up a great point, because the thing is people wonder why they can put out so much poison, as far as their verbal poison into these children's brain, and wonder why people aren't speaking against it. Is because most of them grew up on this, and why would they speak against something that pretty much raised them? And wait. And another thing that I just thought about that you made me think about, it's the same exact thing that Tommy Sotomayor talks about when it comes to why people won't go against the women that are doing all this detrimental crap to their children. And the reason for that is because that's all most of them know. They revere people that have raised them. And if the only person you had in the household was a mother, and even if that person were toxic, it's kind of like the like what I said, the oh god dang it, what was the syndrome? The Stockholm syndrome. You could be a prisoner in your own home, but you're going to love the person because that's all you know and that's all that you're around. And when I talk about prison, I'm talking about the mentality. The mentality of a person that cannot break out of something that is negative when that is all that they are taught.
I know that this is harsh, but the babies for benefits thing is a real thing. These women.
Wait. Can we hashtag Roger on that one, please? Please talk about this babies for benefits. Can we get a hashtag Roger in the chat? Because Roger was actually a guy who said that he didn't see these type of women that are literally just having children for the benefits that they can collect from them for a multitude of reasons. And I said, how can you not see this when the numbers dictate it is very prevalent in the black community?
Hold on, it's not just prevalent. The exception is black women who don't. And from where I am speaking about, that is the absolute truth. It is an easy out for these women. They don't graduate high school. They don't get a complete education. They have no real options when it comes to employment. And so what do? What is the easiest thing to start doing? The easiest thing for them to start doing is to start having sex, especially unprotected sex. They don't care who the real father is. And they have these kids. And I've seen mothers come into special education programs in IEP conferences, and I've extolled them. No, your child does not need to be in special education. They insist that they are put in special education because I know everybody says that I'm wrong about this, but I'm going to state this, and I don't care if I have seen it myself. These women are able to pull a check if their kids are put into special education and given the diagnosis of cognitively or behaviorally disturbed, because they will get a social security check for that kid for their disability. Now, why would a parent want to take a kid out of a better education environment and put them into a worse education environment if they really didn't care about the education that their kids were getting? They cared about pulling down money for that month.
Yep.
And there is no excuse for it. There's absolutely no excuse. I don't want to hear, well, I couldn't make this month's rent, so I screwed up my kid's education. I don't care about, well, I couldn't make the bills, so I screwed up my kid's education. When you place them into the special education tract, it is very hard to get them out of that. It is very hard for them to switch back to the, in fact, I'd never even heard of a kid at Vincent switching back to the regular education tract. And we can go into the numbers of kids that Vincent says it's graduating compared to the kids that it actually graduates. And it's very telling by the class sizes of your 9th grade compared to your 12th grade.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to bring up something that you said in your email, and I hope you guys are enjoying the show so far. We are just getting this thing started for the people that are coming in, please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up so that way to let more people know that we're live. Do us a very small favor. You don't always have to donate. Shout out to the people that have already shown some love. Shout out to Jimmy D. Shout out to my sister Chaz. And also shout out to Maloish. I don't know how I just remembered that off the top of my head because I didn't look it up, but I'm trying to get better with my memory, right? But I wanted to bring up something that you said in your email. And if y'all would, hit that thumbs up for me. It's an easy way to be able to share the show and let other people know that we are live. So that way, if they want to come over and check out the content, that they can come check us out and see what me and my brother Matt are talking about here. Okay? So let me make sure you ever see. Oh, yeah. I am my brother Teddy on Fire. So Jimmy D, Malois, Chaz, and Ted on Fire sent the donation so far. That's pretty dope. You say it in your email. I feel strongly like we need to evaluate each other based on individual values, behavior, character, and the last thing, and character behavior. The last thing we need to fall for are race baiting, intersectionality politics of the Marxists. like people like Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and the rest of the race hustlers like Eric Michael Dyson. And you actually brought up a bunch of names that I love the fact that you talked about that, because I actually did do one show about Al Sharpton. I didn't do one on Jesse, or did I? No, I actually both of those shows were on Al Sharpton, because number one, I did one specifically on him, and then he also was involved with everybody know the show that made me real big, which was talking about the little silly dude Devontae Clark. You know what I'm saying? And but I did get a chance to watch the interview that Tommy did recent, not the interview, but the breaking down of an interview that Michael Eric Dyson did on a panel. And it's just so funny how, yes. And it was just so funny how, you know, when you have a topic and you want to stick to that topic and basically kind of have like a forum for a debate about being able to debate this particular thing, in some kind of way he wants to always drag it back to this bullcrap idea of white people are holding us down and this and that. And I'm just like, man, you know, it's like at this point, I feel like these people, when you say that they are race baiting and that they are what was the other you said race hustlers, and the terminology hustler in the black community basically means to use the means that you have to be able to get over on your people to be able to generate funds. Can it be a bad thing? Yes, it can absolutely be a bad thing depending on what it is that you are pushing out there in order to generate funds. This is this idea of this victimhood mentality. So all I would say is that when you look at the results of what we have going on in the black community, and you say, how much good has it done since 1964 up into 2018 for us to have this mentality of slavery is why where we are? It's because of the white man holding us back, you know, and preventing us from getting jobs, and preventing us from, you know, from moving into good neighborhoods, and preventing this and preventing that. Well, in all actuality, if you think about what we have, it is not to say that some elements don't exist. We are not lacking to acknowledge the existence of some entities.
Like, hold on, Jay, can I stop you on that? I don't mean to run over your words, but are we really going to acknowledge the Ku Klux Klan or the neo-Nazis? Are we really? I mean, their number is so small that when they had the Unite the Right at Charlottesville, like, we're talking less than 5,000 devoted members. Mm-hmm. Do you really think that those white people in some kind of cabal are keeping like, what is it now? What is the total population of the African American community?
I think it just dropped down a little bit.
14
but it's like,
million?
Yeah.
Like, well, no. It's like 42 million. Mm-hmm. How can 5,000 racist assholes keep down and keep black people from aspiring to their best? That this whole thing is, this whole idea is just nonsense. It's an excuse.
Yes.
And you know what? Excuses are very nice because they allow you to fail. And that is what this is all about. Now, going back to those race baiters that I talked about, Jesse Jackson has a racket. All of those people that I talked about have a racket. They attack a multi-million-dollar company, a multi-million-dollar entity. And they accuse them of racism. And those companies pay these people off. This has been a way for those people to get paid in the background. You'll notice that this is never, ever really public. Their settlements are never public. And so this victimhood issue is for these leaders to attack corporations, accuse them of this racism, and they get a check in the mail because the corporations will pay them to see them off.
Yep.
Because they don't want to deal with it in the press.
That is
because
absolutely
you get
right.
accused of the R word. I'm sorry, you say the N word. You say anything like that. And this society attacks. But it's not like that when it comes to, no, I don't even want to go into that. I don't want to go into the double standards. But I'm saying that this society, I'm going to say this and I'm going to leave it at that because I don't want to address it anymore. But it is totally okay for black people to call white people crackers and honkies and all of these other racial terms, but it is never okay in public for a public figure to respond in kind with those words. And I don't like using those words. I've never used those words. But that is a double standard. And it's always used one way. It's always used to destroy a conservative or a very rich company, and it's used to get these leaders paid. And they don't care about the kids that are being killed every day on the street. They don't care about those things, because if they did care about those things, they would do something about it. But they don't do something about it. They don't take any of that money, that Rainbow Kush money or whatever, or Rainbow Foundation, whatever it's called, and they don't put that money into actually helping people who are suffering from traumatic events in their life. They don't do that. No, all of that money goes to their brothers and their sisters and their wives, and all of it gets filtered down to their benefit. Own goddamn bank account.
It's for personal benefit. And yes. Look, and matter of fact, we had two people that said it. The first person I saw was 77, said discussing the double standard. Teddy on Fire also said the double standard. That's exactly right. Because the thing is I don't have a problem with Black Lives Matter going after a cop that killed a young man, in a lot of cases unnecessarily. But there is a big ass problem when you want to go all out and go attack those officers that do put their lives on the line. I don't care what nobody got to say. Don't tell me that they don't put their lives on the line. Whenever some shit goes wrong in your life, the first person you gonna call is 911. Them same white folks is gonna come help you out of your situation, right? So you need them. That's why I say, man, it's a stupid idea to sit there and try to make it seem like we're being held down by the same people that give us so much in return that we just choose to just not acknowledge. But to get back to my point, whenever you have 80-something people getting shot in a weekend in Chicago, and these assholes are not down there talking about that, are you kidding me? That tells you something. How can we talk about Black Lives Matter if the largest loss of Black lives aren't being discussed? I'll say that again. It's weird.
I just want to ask this question. Sorry, Jay. I didn't want to cut you off. Finish.
Oh, you good? You good? That's all I'm saying. I think it's weird the fact that we have the largest loss of Black life and we ain't talking about that. We are talking about the microcosm of life lost, which makes no sense. That's why our numbers are dwindling.
Yeah, they talk about Trayvon Martin. They talk about Michael Brown, and some people in the chat might get upset about this. But in both cases, both black men aided in their destruction. They did things to cause what happened.
Yep.
And Michael Brown attacked a police officer. That is factually true. You attack a police officer and you come out with your life on the other end, you're lucky. That's not the exception. There are you attack a police officer, and what a police officer is thinking in that moment is that they could get their gun or their baton or their stun gun and stun them and take everything off of them and shoot them. You punch a police officer, you push a police officer. That is what their training evokes in them. It evokes violence. They're taught not to upgrade the violence, not to try and get more violent, but the moment that you put that person's life in jeopardy, and mind you, these are people that spend their lives on the street dealing with criminals, that deals with your mentality of dealing with people because you see the worst in people. You're seeing, as a police officer, you're seeing the worst experience that people go through in their lives, and you're showing up to that event. So you're showing up at an event where somebody is going through the worst possible thing in their life, and you're dealing with that person on an emotional, logical, and I don't know, intellectual, I guess, but definitely emotionally, because that's what's really taken over. And you have to de-escalate. That's what policing is all about. It's about de-escalating the situation, about enforcing the law, but about making sure that that the violence that you do as a police officer is as little as possible. Mm-hmm. That is what the police are great at. And I don't care who you are, that is the objective truth. You can come up with exceptions. I mean, Eric Garner, I think, was an exception. The guy that was running away from the cop that thought he pulled his taser, but pulled his gun and shot him. Mm-hmm. That was an exception. Those were mistakes. That doesn't speak to a wider conspiracy of a white cabal of race soldiers to kill young black men. No, I'm sorry. who is killing young black men in massive numbers are other young black men.
Wait,
We
and
cannot
also
get around that fact. And Black Lives Matter, they're illegitimate to me at this point because they will not speak to any of the statistics that bore this out.
great point.
And it pisses me off.
Great point. You and the rest of us, the rest of the world has every right to be upset. Let me bring up what Seven also said. I thought was dope, which is what we do here. At least he gets it. I think this is Seven's first time in our chat, which I think is pretty cool. That we were able to adjust a little bit, make a couple of adjustments, give people a chance to kind of speak their thoughts on the topic, and look where we are now. He's absolutely expressing the exact same rhetoric that we do, and he said blacks should protest against blacks because blacks are our own worst enemies, and that's a fact. That is a statistical fact. The black on black crime rate is insane. And matter of fact, if you guys think about what Jason Gunn actually said the last show, you don't have to know exactly what it said. If you guys go back and watch the last show, you can see it in the chat. But one of the things that he said was, I think he said, if we continue the rate that we're going right now, in 30 years, I think that he said we're going to actually be the smallest group of people here in the United States in 30 years.
You will, because your population size is shrinking. It's not growing.
That's scary.
That reflects the amount of murder. That reflects the amount of children that die because of abuse and neglect. And Joey Juju just said something in the chat. He said, white people should not involve themselves in black issues. Well, okay, Joey, there are not enough black police officers to enforce the law in black neighborhoods. There are not enough black teachers to teach black kids. There are not enough black people to rule as lawyers, judges, any of these other civil services that you talk about. So what I want to say to you, Joey, is that I look at you not as necessarily a black man. I look at you as an American first.
Yes.
And I care about Americans. I don't care about your skin color. I was going to swear. I stopped myself. I don't care about that.
Yeah, we can't cuss too much. But you're doing great. You're doing great, by the way. You're doing great.
I think that's a distraction. It's a way of dividing you from me. Whereas I have, as a veteran, I've served you in your national interest and protected you and even educated your own kids, whereas you have not done that. Where are you in this? I want to challenge all of those people who want to say white people need to stay out of our issues. Okay, where are you in this? Where are you taking up the sacrifice and the time to become a police officer and a teacher and all of these other things that need to get done? You're not doing it. We're picking up the slack, and you criticize us for that.
I'll give you.
I want to know why we're interested in getting involved in your conversations, because we're seeing your children die.
It's a great point, and let me say this, because the thing is if white people did not what we consider to be white people, we'll just say the government. Let's just throw that out there and say the government. In certain neighborhoods, if they didn't just come in and clean these neighborhoods up, or tear down these houses that are dilapidated and torn down and roach and bug infested and just uninhabitable, like the story I did about the illegal daycare that was being ran. They had 11 children there, and everybody in that house got sick because they said it was feces on every surface in that house. If it weren't for those same type of people coming in and saying, hey, we need to take these kids out of here, we need to go take them to the hospital, get them fixed up, shut down this house, force them to fix this thing. If it were left up to us, we would continue to live in our own filth. And I'll reiterate it one more time. If not for those same white, and I get what you're saying, Joey. Joey's been around for a while. I got you. If not for those same group of people, the black people as a whole would continue to live in our own destruction. What I wanted to say about race is I love this saying, and I had to pull it up because I couldn't remember exactly how it went. But this talks about what me and Matt have been talking about this entire time. We were all humans until race disconnected us, religion separated us, politics divided us, and wealth classified us. If you want to know where the divide is in the United States of America, that's where it is. And we have to continue to have these conversations because this is how we're going to fix it. Because we are able to be on a platform where, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people can listen to us. And the more that we continue to express these ideas of truth and logic, then I believe that we can make a difference because we're able to prove our points, being able to put out facts and truth here.
I absolutely agree, Jay.
So,
Do you want to transition into right step, or should I continue going on about what I saw in the unions when it and the graduation rate where I left off when it came to Vincent?
we could actually go ahead and go forward. Like I said, I was just kind of cherry picking a few of the things that you said in your email here. And also, again, man, to the people that are watching, like I said, we got about 80 people watching. It's pretty dope. If y'all would hit that thumbs up for us, continue to share the show, and I hope that we're having a good, positive conversation. We've got some. He said I've been in your channel about 3 weeks now. Seven, I appreciate that because, like I say, you know, initially I know some people were like, you know, where we at, and some of the people in the chat. But like I say, sometimes if you give people a chance, man, and just hear them out, and we can, you know, we can sometimes have a little fun in the chat and joke. That's why I ask my people not to block, not to time out, sometime for us to just be able to just talk a little bit, and I bet you we'll find something in common, and that's what we always want to capitalize on. You know what I'm saying? So I think that allows us to continue to keep growing the way that we have. You know.
Well, I wanted to talk on two specific issues because I think that this will really enlighten your community, the people, the good people that you have watching the show. And I've been in touch with some of them in previous shows. This is not my first time to your channel, and I think that you know that.
Oh yeah.
I want to first talk about Milwaukee's policy. In case any of your other public school districts propose this idea, there was an idea in Milwaukee that it was more valuable to keep kids who failed their classes in league with their friends. So if a kid failed, like let's say from middle school, they did not know how to do math or reading at the 8th grade level, they would be allowed to advance to the high school level because it was believed, again, I'm putting quotes over that because that was not the true intention. That was the reason that was said, the reason that was given. There are no studies to back that up. There's no nothing behind it. And I'll tell you why they did it. But they passed a policy in MPS that said that we're going to move these kids on. So every kid is going to get 12 years of education, but wherever they are at the 5th grade, they always go to the 6th grade, to the middle school. Wherever they are at the 8th grade, they go to the 9th grade, which is high school. And we're going to continue this policy because it's more important that these kids stay with their friends than it is that they get an actual education.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That was the reasoning behind that policy. What this policy actually was to move disruptive students through the system as fast as possible and not make teachers responsible for their students' their education, their application, their tests, their test scores, how they were actually doing. So as a 9th grade teacher coming in on the first day, I had students that had reached my classroom that had a 3rd grade reading level.
Gee whiz, man.
And a math score that they couldn't even predict because it wasn't even at the first grade.
Wow.
So when you adopt a policy like that, the reason is to push these kids through without regard to where they actually are performing. There should be no elementary school that allows any of their students to leave the elementary school without a 5th grade passing score on their tests for reading and math. Same thing with the middle school. If you push that policy through, it would force those teachers to engage. And this is what I saw at the high school, because they adopted this policy. Many of these tenured, I forget the word that you use for it, Jay. We called them just tenured union teachers.
Seniority. I just heard it
Senior,
referred to as seniority.
right. Many of these teachers were not really there to teach. So they would just show videos like, don't be drinking juice in the hood while jacking off or whatever it is. I don't know what they would show all of these hood movies. And that was algebra. That was their algebra class. They would pass out a worksheet, put a video on to entertain the kids, almost like they thought of these kids like animals.
Sheesh. Wow.
And that to me is real racism. That to me says you don't think about the humanity of this person. You're just out to get yours. I mean, I had a teacher that was in an adjacent room where he spent most of his time looking up properties that he could buy. And he always had a video going for the kids. He had a binder for every one of the kids. He had a worksheet in there. And that was his class. That was geology.
I'm gonna tell you guys. I'm telling you guys. Not only have I've been in schools, you know, obviously I've been in the schools, but my mother being a teacher, I've seen a lot of stuff. And not only that, I remember one time I went to my son's school and saw exactly what Matt just said happening. And they literally got these kids in here with like toys and shit. I'm like,
I'm not going cracker step 7. I don't know what that comment is, but that's absurd.
Oh, I didn't see it, but I think it's insane that, you know, that like these kids are supposed to be in here learning, you know, between like like 8, 9, 10 years old or something like that, and I'm like, what the hell are toys doing in the freaking classroom? And I'm just like, clearly you can tell that they don't give a crap. But this is also why I said that education must start at home. So if you have that many children falling through, you know, the sifter of this system, then what I would say, I don't think that the government needs to come in and do more. That's one thing that I've always been against. I think we need smaller government and just more of us, you know. Let me see what was said there. Yeah, I'm ignore the chat because that's gonna mess me up. But I think that we need less government and more accountability. Less government, more accountability.
The government is what provided the incentives for this failure in the first place. The government is what incentivized it, is what incentivized taking the father out of the home. You remove the father, you remove the values, you remove the discipline, you remove everything necessary to actually successfully teach at the public school level. It does not boggle my mind why public schools work out in the suburbs where they actually receive less funding per student, right? Okay. Where property taxes are greater.
Yeah.
And in the inner city, in the black neighborhood where there are no fathers, they receive more funding and they get even less results. They get no results. The government incentivized this through welfare, through Section 8, through all of the giveaway programs. I'm sorry, it's the goddamn truth. I know it's a hard kernel of truth to eat.
Oh, no, they're
the goddamn fact.
They're used to hearing this. How many times have I told y'all about the Title IV program that is the umbrella system for welfare? How many times have I talked about that? And I'm going to keep putting it out there. You know, to be honest with you, Matt, I've actually started watching people in some chats and some conversations now starting to push that rhetoric out there because now they understand it and now they see how it's manifested itself into something just completely negative. And I love it. I think it's a beautiful thing. And that's why I say I think that these conversations are important because I'm watching people that listen to Tommy and starting to watch people actually change. Because like I say, it's a mentality. Race is an idea. It's a social construct. It's nothing more than an idea. If we just choose to just stop believing in what we've been taught and just rewire our programming, then race would literally mean nothing at that point.
Well, I want to say this, that when it came to the special education wing that I was involved with at Vincent High School, And this was a high school that Barack Obama visited, mind you, in 2009 after he won his first election victory as president. I voted for him. When you went down that wing during class time, and I find it amazing that you never bothered to go into this wing or go down any of the wings as the president. That would have been kind of like as president of the United States. I think it kind of would be, if I was funding this thing, if the state was funding this thing and this was a public entity, I think I would have wanted to go and investigate it, go into a couple classrooms and see what kids were doing. He came and gave a great speech and then left out the school. This was a school that had police called in riot gear the day before because they were fighting with the school staff and the school teachers. And he left out of the school without even investigating one classroom. That's, you know what? It just says that he knew what was going on, but he knew that he really couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah.
He didn't even want to recognize the problem. Those are the exact leaders that we need to get rid of. We, as a businessman, and you know that, as a businessman, you don't propel people in your business who can't get the job done. You propel the people in your business who can get the job done, who don't ignore the problems. And what I want to say about the special education wing in Vincent High School, I love just digging the knife in just into their side every single chance I get. When it came to the number of classrooms where it was dark instead of light classrooms where the teacher is actually trying to do something, and success or failure, I'll give that teacher another chance, like the next year, to try and do something, because you can fail with the class. Like, you can legitimately fail. It's very, very difficult to control 45 kids. Imagine it. Some women cannot control 4 kids. Imagine 45 being asked to sit for 90 minutes and listen to biology and not get out of control. It's special. Not everybody can be teachers. It's special people who are able to control that many human beings for that amount of time and teach them something. Teach them how to think. Teach them how to do math. Teach them how to read and write. It's special people who know how to do those things, can manipulate their, I almost want to say their mind, can manipulate their emotions to control these kids. And that's what you really have to do. You have to figure out a way to draw them in, to make them care about how you feel and see them in that moment. But what I want to say about those classrooms is the number of classrooms, it was about half. So half of these classrooms were just showing movies and nothing of real substance was going on.
Yeah.
And every single classroom, 40 kids times $14,000 to sometimes $17,000 per student, that was being flushed down the toilet. And then people wonder why the murder rates are where they are. You're giving these people, and it's not to say that they're not guilty in their own poor behavior. They absolutely are. What I want to, what my purpose is to show how the public education system, since these communities went from primarily white to primarily black, have put a good face on things and continued on doing what they're doing because they want the cash flow to continue.
Yep.
They don't care about the results. They don't care about, what happens to these kids once they leave. And most of them leave before graduating. The graduation rates were what I talked to you about. You go into any Milwaukee public school and you will see that of a school of like almost 3,000 kids, the primary class will be the freshman class. You'll see the sophomore class halved, then the junior class halved after that, and then the senior class halved after that. And then they will have a couple of people that are 5th and 6th year students.
Yeah.
And this does not reflect a school that has anywhere close to a 50% graduation rate. a school that has a 50% graduation rate has a freshman class of 1,000 students and 560 students that are graduating. Everybody would agree with that definition. But this, again, is another policy of Milwaukee Public School Systems where they got very creative with the policies regarding the definition of somebody graduating.
Yeah.
They were allowed to exclude kids that moved, and that means any kid that moved out of state or moved in the inner city. And we all know that these families get kicked from apartment to apartment all of the damn time.
Mm-hmm.
Some kids might live in a different apartment or a different structure 4 to 6 times in a year. That allowed them to take them off the rolls.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
A kid didn't show up for 3 weeks, they were allowed to be kicked off the rolls. And then, if they showed up after that and actually graduated, they were then put back on the rolls. It was very purposeful what they were doing. And what they were doing was that it was fraud. And what you need to realize is that they were defrauding the taxpayers.
Yep.
Every lie that they told is a felony because they are defrauding the taxpayers. But they are allowed to get rid of. They're allowed to get to continue with their farce because people defend the unions.
Mm.
Now I defend my mother's union. My mother's union, who works at the college level, is doing their job. They're graduating students. Imagine a union that worked at a steelworker shop where 100% raw materials went in and you got 5% finished product out. How would you defend that union?
You can't. You shouldn't. You actually shouldn't.
Now imagine this is human lives. And the tragedy takes place on the streets. And we contribute. We're not the cause of it. We're not the cause of the violence. But we contribute to it because we give them no options. And I almost swore right there.
Yeah. Man.
I'm trying not to swear. As hard as I can, I'm trying not to swear.
I appreciate that, man.
I knew these students that got killed. I knew them. I cared about them. I worked with them for years. Yeah. I gave a shit about them. I swear to God, some of the students, I cared more about them than their own mother did.
Oh, I can totally. Do you know how many students that I've watched grow up, even to this day, that refer to my mom as their mom? And it's a real thing, man. Like they literally feel like, oh, that's my mom, and I used to just think of it just as a beautiful thing, but there are lots of them that actually. It's not a beautiful
thing. It's a horrible thing.
Well, you know, at the time I was thinking like, you know, oh,
yes.
It's a beautiful thing. You know what I'm saying? It's a bad thing that students have to refer to their coaches and their mentors. You know, like I think it was like I'm actually what I want to do here is see if we can condense this down into the last 15 minutes, our entire conversation. See if we can squeeze all of this in 15 minutes. Okay, so this is the thing. I was listening to something not that long ago, or I reported on something not that long ago, where there was a mother. Oh, they were talking about I think the little boy that ran away or something like that said that he was it was a story that I just did within the last week or so. And they said that this little boy came home and they said that he was abducted by some white racists and taken, and he was robbed and beat up and stuff like that. And he came home. And the first people that once they reported it to the police came out and talked to the mom. And then they talked to the community activists. I'll say that for the people that are watching the show again.
Community activists.
They talked to the mom and the community activists, not the mother and the father. The mother and that's the dynamic that I'm talking about is so detrimental with us not having that balance, the mother and the father, the yin and the yang, the push and the pull in the household. It is a very counterproductive thing to continue to go that route and for us not to call it out as something bad, especially when you get to see the product of that, you know, manifesting itself in the death of dozens and thousands and hundreds and thousands of black lives every single year. And it's usually people that look just like me. It's black men killing black men because of the fact that you didn't have a black man in the household and you don't actually have any. And this, okay, I'm gonna just throw this out there. I had a conversation. I'm not gonna call her name out, but she's actually a pretty prominent person that people follow, has a large following. But I brought this point up, and I said it's very, very difficult. It's damn near impossible for a group of women to raise boys and expect for those boys to produce good men. And then to turn around and have that thing replicate itself into something positive. And I said you could look at the fact of like places like Chicago where there are not fathers in the households. We'll just say there ain't none. I'm not saying there ain't none at all, but let's just think of it as there aren't any based on
the, like 80 to 85%.
The majority, right? We're always talking about the majority and not the minority, right? So, if you have that many, you have to ask. If people are like, "Well, how do you stop the violence?" You can't just go in there and just keep saying, "Stop the damn violence." You can't do that. It's not working. You have to understand and fix things at a grassroots level and say what is causing this. If you ask me, and if you ask Tommy Sotomayor, we're going to point the finger in the camera and say that this is black women's doing. Why? Yeah. Because they have the choice. They are the ones that choose who the they choose who the father is going to be in these children's lives. Because men cannot do what a woman will not let that man do. So at the end of the day, the woman is the gatekeeper to the house. The woman's body is like a house. No one can come into your house unless what happens? Unless you open that door. It is an innate power that women have. It is a beautiful power that women have. So if you're going to embrace it the white way and say that this is your responsibility. At the end of the day, if you don't want to embrace it as your responsibility, step the fuck off and let us try to do something and let us fix it. You understand? So I think that we need to allow men to be fathers, to try at least, because the way that we're going is not going anywhere positive. So let me go ahead and move past that because I wanted to throw that curveball out there real quick. But I wanted to address your last portion of this email, so maybe we can wrap this up, like I say, roughly within about 12 to 10 minutes. The education of our children, and this coming from your email, the education of our, I'm going to just read the whole thing. The education of our children is the most important issue when it comes to domestic policy. When 1 in 4 African Americans going to college has 10th grade skills after they are accepted, when less than 25% of kids from poor black communities graduate, and even fewer that have skills to succeed outside of the educational environment, what should we expect them to do? When you keep giving these kids break after break when it comes to what the world expects out of them, you set them up for failure. In Milwaukee, they adopted this policy that kids should be allowed to graduate to keep them in the same class as their peers for social reasons. Do you really think that the district gave a crap about the social relations of of students it expels as much as possible under law? No. They want to move these kids through the system. So this is basically just reiterating what you just actually spoke on. They want to move these kids through the system and pass them off as a graduate, even though every major Milwaukee high school looks like this. You just said this: 1,200 freshmen, maybe 600 sophomores, 300 juniors, and 100 seniors. And I actually saw that because I went to Oklahoma City Public Schools. Same exact thing happened, right? Whole bunch of freshmen, not a lot of seniors graduating with us, and even less when you're talking about when we tried to have our 10-year reunion. We're coming up on our 20-year here pretty soon. So to just watch that, it's such a small collective. Anyway, that is less than 8% graduation rate in how I define it, but they cook the books. This is the discussion I have always wanted to have but don't seem to be able to have the platform to be able to do it. So I'll paraphrase that portion, right? I want to go through all the corruption. Let me see. I want to talk about the corruption because you see more from the African American community take their kids out of public schools and put them into charter schools. It will lessen the influence of the large public teacher unions over public policy when it comes to education, and yes. That will always be a good thing. The weaker teachers union are the more individual teachers will be held to account and the I'm sorry, and the better comes. Did I miss that somewhere? The
The
um the
minor
a- the a-
typo.
yeah, okay. The average instruction will be given to the average student. If it were up to me, I would do away with the public system altogether and let the public sector fill the need. Let me see. Just to give you an
Private,
idea.
private.
Oh,
I
the
meant private,
private sector.
private,
Okay, I was like, okay, okay. I
and
got you.
charter.
Okay. Let me see. Just to give you an idea of each student of what each school gets per student. In Wisconsin, a special education student will get over $12,000 a year. A regular student gets a little more than $10,000 a year. Now, the kids in the inner city will get more than the students who attend rural schools, who outperform inner city school students despite receiving less money. I've always said throwing money at the problem don't fix the problem, so I love
Right.
that. Okay. Whereas very few inner city students bother to attend schools. I'm telling you, these inner city schools are cash cows for corruption, for the public teacher unions that then give handsomely to all Democratic candidates who defend them. Charter schools are God's wrath, in my opinion, because students' results speak louder than union bought commercials. However, teachers' unions are still retarding the the economy when it comes to education by limiting funding the same public student would if they went to a public school would get $10,000 plus. Charter schools only get $6,000 or less. The funding is
Yeah.
not equal, and thus the research, which is always biased towards the unions because they pay for them, is not equal in any way either because the studies are funded by public unions. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you the floor about that, and like I said, I might have messed up a little bit of the reading of that, but I'm continuing to practice, trying to get better. But I want you to elaborate on your thoughts on that, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, the central fact, and I'm sorry if I attacked that like a lion. The central fact of that is that when it comes to funding of public schools and charter schools, public schools for the same student, just bland same student, they'll get $10,000 plus in a public side, $6,000 plus when it comes to a school like Right Step. So their budgets are compromised 40% just from the outset. And this law, guess who made it up? Guess who said that these charter students, that these charter schools could not receive the same funding per student as the public schools? Just a wild guess.
Uh, you'll have to tell me.
The unions. The unions were who advocated for that, pushed for that, got it through legislature in the Wisconsin Senate, and our government. And they have done similar things in New York. They've done similar things in New Jersey. Everywhere where charter schools have been tried, they have always had their funding cut. So it's never a one-to-one comparison when it comes to public schools and charter schools because they're not receiving the same funding. Now, I'm not contradicting myself on this when I say that throwing more money at the problem it is the solution, okay? But if you're going to compare them, then there needs to be an even comparison.
I agree.
When it came to Vincent, I was still buying all of my materials. I was still buying or stealing, actually. I actually stole all the textbooks that I need and bought notebooks, pencils, snacks, whatever I needed for the classroom. I probably spent maybe an eighth of my total take home on facilitating my classroom and the things that we needed, because those things were not available, despite the fact that the kids that I had in my classroom were actually bringing in the money. They were the ones who were bringing in the money to the school. When it came to Right Step, I had to do the same thing, got wildly different results. Because at Right Step, there was actually discipline. There was somebody who held these kids to account. There, it was a smaller school, which I always advocate. I always advocate a smaller school because it increases the chances that your child will create a real relationship with their teachers, their administrators, and the people that watch over them.
Yep.
And I'm not trying. I'm rushing. I really, really, really want to hold another conversation about just Right Step in its own and talk about how and what that school did right, because they have saved lives literally. There were kids that came out of that school that got killed, but I'm telling you, that school did amazing things for the kids that were there, because it was and I don't really advocate this, but it was a real father for those kids. You had drill sergeants who literally ran your platoon that these young men could look up to. And they, again, they filled the gap whereas, an absent father, that drill sergeant came into their life, taught them values, set them down, told them all of those things that our fathers taught us, those hard things that our mothers really don't want to talk about, those hard realities of life. One of the things that I used to tell my kids in my classroom is life is not fair. Life is not fair.
Right.
If you're a North Korean born in North Korea, your life is not going to be fair to an American citizen. Just like if you're born in Los Angeles or in West Virginia, your life is not going to be fair. There is no fairness in this world. What we need to motivate each other towards is, getting off of this racist ideology. Again, I just see it as a racist ideology of Marxist doctrine, where we need to separate each other based on race and, go towards tribalism. No, we need to judge each other as individuals. And that's what that school did. You were judged based on your actions, based on your performance in school, based on your performance in sport. That was another really good thing that they did. Sports was mandatory. I'm telling you, the first year that I taught at Right Step, like, I want to say a quarter of the day, the kids were running, or they were doing calisthenics, or they were getting all of that energy out of them. And then they would go to class. And that was a great thing. It was a great thing for discipline. It was a great thing for the drill sergeants. It was a great thing for the kids, because everybody benefited. By the time they got to class, they weren't bouncing off the walls. They had expended that energy, and they were ready then to sit and listen and communicate. And, again, it was just revolutionary in my eyes, but so simple when it came down to how kids actually are. And I'm getting off in a tangent, but Vincent was everything wrong in my eyes. Poor leadership. In fact, the guy who was my principal was canned the very next year, even after he was celebrated by Barack Obama as being a successful black administrator. Again, this goes into how Barack Obama looked at race and saw it as a dividing factor instead of an inclusionary factor. He saw it as, you and him, that principal, being more together as brothers rather than me and you, because our ideas are more similar. I couldn't tell you how different that principal was from you. He was the exact opposite of you, and he had the exact opposite things to say. And he was really an awful person. He really was. He backstabbed people, and he never really. He always pushed the victim narrative. That was very easy for these kids to latch on and say, you know what, I'm failing in my life because of all of these white supremacists in this horrible country that I live in. That was one thing that I heard at every single time that he got up and stood in front of the students. He always emphasized that. And so, a lot of it when it comes to schools is leadership and understanding what policies are going to be what policies not only are going to make a difference, but make a good difference. My principal at Right Step made a good difference. My principal at Vincent made a horrible difference when it came to these kids because he emphasized every message that we don't want to send to these kids today. We don't want to tell them that it's okay to fail. And that's exactly what this victim narrative tells them to do. It gives them an excuse to act irresponsibly and fail. And what do you think happens? What do you think is the result of failure in the streets? It's getting killed. It's why we have 60 kids in Chicago being killed every single weekend.
Matter of fact, somebody actually just said in the chat earlier, I didn't mean to cut you off. Somebody in the chat said just this past weekend it was 40. Absolutely damn ridiculous.
Go ahead. These are kids. If this was military personnel and it was happening overseas, this would be a huge deal. You would have the press would be jumping off their soapboxes to blame President Trump for this. But this happens in every single city, in every major American city. And it's disgusting. It's horrible. It's despicable. And I don't know why more people don't have my fire to talk about it. And Jay, I know from our prior conversation, you never say no. I'm not trying to play this out. I would like to talk about Right Step and where it went right for some of these kids, because all I've done this stream, and I didn't mean it to be this long, this emphasized. I want to talk about the importance of a father, what I saw mothers doing. I saw mothers, as soon as that check stopped coming in the mail for their disabilities, I saw them kicked out of their house. I used to drive the kid home. His name was Quentin. And I really liked this kid. I used to drive him home every night because if he went on the bus, he would get his ass kicked. If he walked home, he would probably get killed because he's walking through gang territory. And his older brother, this guy named Tyrone, his older brother was a part of another gang. And his mother and his live-in or her live-in boyfriend, they put him out in the middle of winter into this garage that was partially collapsing. And he had a cot, he had a thermal insulator, he had a sleeping bag, and then a couple of blankets. And that's where he lived. As soon as the checks stopped coming for him, he was not allowed to live in the house. And that tells you why so many of these young men, especially the young men, because that's what I'm an advocate for. These young men, as soon as the check stops coming, they're kicked out of the house. And where do they find sanctuary? It's with the gangs, with the people that can use them. And you never brought that up when it came to how gangs recruit. And that is how gangs recruit. And it has to deal with these mothers and how cold they are towards their own children. And that's why I don't care what people say when I say that I cared more about these kids than some of their own mothers. Not all of them. I'm not speaking to all. I'm talking to a lot of them. They did not care about their own kids. And that really bothers me. It's an emotional subject for me because I've seen kids that I worked with for years that were kicked out of the house who had what they needed to be successful, who had a chance. And just because of they were kicked out of the house, they got involved in the gang life and were killed. Mm-hmm. Died in stupid firefights over nothing, over shoes, over a beef on social media. Oh my God. You don't see this in any other culture. You don't see it in any other culture. I'm sorry. I don't mean to yell at you. I'm really trying not to yell. I'm trying to cool it down. But it's like, these kids, I still see their faces in my dreams. And it fucking... Sorry.
Speak it,
pisses me off.
Speak it, man. Speak from your heart, man.
I mean, there is no excuse for it. And the racist shit, the racist things that people say to excuse it And they do excuse it.
Yes, they do.
The racist things that they use to excuse it are so irresponsible. I could never say that about a child of my own or a relative of my own. I just could never dismiss it off top. I just couldn't.
Can I pause you just for a moment, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up, and I'm gonna let you give your closing thoughts. To Joey, he said, "Why do you care so much?" I'll tell you exactly why. Because it was actually because you might not have seen the beginning of the show, but I'll give you I'll put it into a small snowball for you. The reason why is because of what I brought up earlier. Is because he is an American. I'm an American. Everybody that's in the chat that lives in the United States of America, we are Americans, and because we are human beings. And I think that when you see such a large problem like this, it is our responsibility as Americans to address that problem. Because the cold part about it is that every other community in the United States actually does it. Whenever there is a large problem in those communities, those people in their communities step up and address those problems. And one of the things that we have in the black community is we have a lack of leadership, and we have a lack of accountability, and we have a lack of shame. And it has to come from somewhere. So think about this. If we
wait, hold on. Can I just interject just one real quick thing, Jay?
Because I'm gonna forget if I don't say it.
Okay.
If we continue to get shut down by trolls and people that continue to flag us down, then how are we able to speak for our own community? That's what I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Where do accountability, discipline, all of those things, leadership, where do they typically come from? They come from men. There is a real difference biologically when it comes to men and women, not black men and black men and white men. There is a real biological difference when it comes to our perspectives, when it comes to our nurturing, when it comes to our leadership. And men are natural leaders. That's why men in all of civilization were the leaders of their household. We're the leaders of their nation. We're the leaders of every single tribal entity that you can pull up. Okay? Women were always the nurturers. Now, I don't want to go off on a sexist tangent, but that is objectively the truth when it comes to human history. No one can debate that. There has never been a nation that was female-led. It was always male-led. And only now that we have created a representative government style are we starting to change that. But back then, back in the tribal days, when men were respected for their ability to kill deer and bring home the bacon, they were always the leaders, and they were always the ones who taught value to their children. And this lesson has been lost due to feminism. And I will attack feminism outright. It has been a disaster for the black community, and the feminists don't care. They don't care. They don't see themselves, one, as responsible, and two, as repugnant. And they are. They have done horrible things in the black community, and they have used you guys as a test case to test their policies. And their policies have been welfare. Their policies have been Section 8. Their policies have been all of the things that have brought down the black community and destroyed the black family. And we need to get it out there and say it loud and unapologetically, because these people are not unapologetic about the results of their policies. They want them to continue. They want to expand their policies. They want to enhance them. And what are we going to get from that? We're going to get much more of the same mayhem that we see in the black community. And I just will not stand for it. I will not keep silent anymore. And I don't care what it costs me. I really don't.
Yeah, and you guys have actually heard. You guys have actually heard Tommy actually referred to us as the canary in the coal mine. That's where that comes from. So let's do this real quick, man. And I definitely appreciate your time. We gotta wrap up. But we definitely probably need to not only revisit this topic, but definitely more topics with you. And I think this has been a very, very productive first hashtag Splain That episode 1 with my brother Matt. You know, also a U.S. Army veteran, man. We definitely appreciate you, as well as others that are watching in the chat and watching the show. Definitely appreciate our veterans, all of them. Definitely appreciate you guys. Hashtag all. This is where we want to include you guys in that. You know what I'm saying? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and wrap us right now. I'm going to give you, if you would, keep it concise for me. Give your closing thoughts. And then I'll give my closing thoughts real quick, and then we'll just end it. So if you would, Brother Matt, give us your closing thoughts.
Oh, sorry. I don't know. I didn't realize you were cueing me.
Oh, yeah. Give your closing thoughts. Let's keep it concise, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. Go ahead. I'm ready for you.
My closing thoughts was that this was a very, very, very productive conversation, and I would like to have a similar one about the right things that Right Step did for its kids, and about how we can go about fixing things, not only in a governmental perspective, but in a cultural and a societal perspective. We talked about the bad decisions, the wrong decisions that were made when it came to public policy, when it came to how people conducted themselves and what things went wrong. I want to talk about how we can change this and have it go right for these young kids. Because whether you're a niece or a nephew of mine, or you're a kid that I had in my classroom, I'm sorry, you're a human being with an intrinsic value, and you're an American, and I care about you. And there were some people in the chat room that, were, why do you care about this so much? Well, you know what? I put it to you like this. If you were in Milwaukee and, let's say a major fire broke out in Milwaukee, in the white neighborhood, would you only care about it when it came to the beginning of your neighborhood? Or would you care about it because a fire can spread anywhere and become huge and you lose control of it at any point, and so you need to put it out at its source? I don't want this violence, this mayhem to expand to any other community, and I want to end it where it started, in the Black community. And I think that is a perfect point to leave off on, DJ.
All right, thank you very much. Well, we're going to go ahead and end it there. Man, if you guys would, for the people that are still here, we got about 75 people watching. Almost had 100 people check in tonight. That's pretty dope, man. If you guys would, I need you guys to put prayer hands up in the chat